Revealed, incredible moment when Marines storm Café after woman fired for saving veteran-s dog. Sarah stood behind the counter, her heart swelling with pride as she served her signature blueberry muffins, the warm scent wafting through the air like a welcome hug. With Lily's delightful giggles in the back of her mind, she flipped pancakes with practiced ease, each smile she shared with the regulars brightening her day. This quaint café, with its peeling paint and mismatched chairs, had become the heartbeat of the town, a sanctuary for mothers like her, where dreams brewed over strong coffee and the weight of the world seemed to lift, if only for a moment. But all of that shuddered to a halt when Bella, the service dog, leapt into view, barking wildly. Outside, Jake, her devoted owner and a veteran, stood frozen in fear, his past threatening to crash into the present. Without thinking, Sarah rushed out, determination coursing through her veins. In a split second, she pushed Bella aside, saving her from a speeding car. She felt a rush of adrenaline and relief wash over her until Mr. Thompson's angry voice shattered the moment. "What have you done, Sarah? You're fired." His face turned a shade of crimson, the café now buzzing with a shocking silence. The warmth she had built crumbled, replaced with a cold injustice. The door swung shut behind her, the weight of the world collapsing onto her shoulders. She wasn't just losing her job, she felt she was losing her place in a community that had become family. As she walked down the street, tears prickling her eyes, she reminded herself of Lily's sweet face she had to fight. Jake's heart broke when he received the news. Bella, his anchor in the storm of PTSD, had drawn Sarah's courage to save her. Furious yet fueled by respect for her selfless act, he rallied his comrades. With the fire of brotherhood burning in his chest, he reached out to veterans across town, igniting a movement. It was more than just support for Sarah, it was about standing up against injustice, reclaiming the dignity of those who served. As the café buzzed with rumors, the weekend crowd was met with an unexpected display of solidarity. Marines in their fatigues marched in, their presence commanding attention. It wasn't intimidation, it was unity, an unmistakable show of strength for Sarah in her fight. The chatter slowed, eyes wide with disbelief and admiration, as the veterans took their seats, silently brewing a storm of emotion within the café's walls. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. With every sip of coffee, palpable tension electrified the air. Jake confronted Mr. Thompson, his voice steady yet charged with emotion. "You fired her for a hero's choice. Is this the example you want to set for our community?" The wind in the café shifted, and the patrons leaned in, the weight of the moment pressing down. Questions hung heavy like the steam from the coffee. What was right? How far would they go to protect their own? As the conversation escalated, eyes darted between Sarah and Mr. Thompson, the energy rising and falling like the tide, each heartbeat echoing a mix of fear and hope. Sarah's pulse raced. This was no longer just her fight. It was for every dreamer, every single mother, every soul who dared to stand up for what was right. Would the café owner see reason? Would he listen to the community's pleas? The air was thick with anticipation, holding its breath for what would happen next. The café seemed to vibrate with the force of the unspoken words hanging in the air, tension pooling in the corners like spilled coffee. Jake stood his ground, heart pounding, every fiber of him urging for change. He had seen his fellow Marines fight for their lives in distant lands, yet this felt like a different kind of battle, a fight for dignity and respect in their own town. Damar. Thompson's face reddened, but as he opened his mouth to respond, the sound of chairs scraping against the floor broke through. One by one, the townsfolk stood up, showing support for Sarah. Their murmurs grew louder, voices blending into a chorus that echoed both love and defiance. You can't fire someone for being a hero," shouted Mrs. Jenkins, who had always come in for her morning coffee and warmed the room with her laughter. "Exactly," another voice chimed in, someone from the back who had always stayed quiet. "This isn't right." Sarah's heart squeezed at the sound. She had felt so alone just moments ago, but now she was surrounded by that very community she had poured her heart into. Hope ignited in her chest, small at first but growing with every determined shout and supportive nod. It was as if the cafe itself was reminding her that it wasn't just a livelihood that was at stake, but a lifeline, a place where dreams converged. "Mr. Thompson," Jake pressed, his voice unwavering, "this is an opportunity for you to step up. Stand with us. Show your community that you value heroism. Show us what it truly means to support each other." The cafe owner shifted uncomfortably under the weight of numerous eyes bearing down on him. Somewhere in the back of Sarah's mind, she dreamed of what this could mean, an apology, perhaps, or her job back. But more than that, it was about choices like the one that had altered the course of her day. Just moments ago, she had been spiraling in despair, and now, as she looked around, she saw resilience. "What if Mr. Thompson finally spoke, his voice trembling ever so slightly, what if I offered her a chance? An opportunity? Perhaps there's a way to make this right." The cafe quieted as everyone held their breath, hoping this was the pivotal moment they had been waiting for. Lily's laughter danced back into Sarah's mind. This fight was for them, not just her. She had to honor that instinct she acted on today, the way she leaped towards danger to save Bella. Could she also leap towards forgiveness? Would she be strong enough to accept what came next? Jake looked around, gauging the crowd. "That's all we ask, Mr. Thompson," he said softly. "Let us lift each other up instead of tearing each other down." The murmurs of agreement swept through the cafe, igniting an atmosphere thick with possibility. Sarah could feel her heartbeat echoing in the silence, each thump a reminder that she wasn't alone anymore. Suddenly, the door swung open and a familiar face appeared. It was Clara, the local news reporter, her camera rolling. "I hear there's something amazing happening here," she said, eyes sparkling with the thrill of a scoop. "What's this about a hero?" And as the crowd turned to Sarah, their faces filled with encouragement and determination, she realized she had a choice to make. Would she let their belief in her guide her forward? As the camera zoomed in, a question hung in the air like the scent of freshly brewed coffee. What would she say in this moment that could change everything? The air in the cafe crackled as the camera focused on Sarah, the lens a portal into the storm of conflicting emotions swirling within her. She could feel every eye on her, the love and expectation a palpable force pressing against her chest. Jake's unwavering gaze anchored her amidst the anxiety flooding her mind. This wasn't just a job now, it was a mission to embrace the story of her life and transform it into something meaningful. Well, her voice trembled at first, unsure and hesitant, but she steadied herself as memories washed over her. Lily's laughter, the warmth of Bella by her side, the love they shared. "I didn't do what I did for recognition. I did it to protect something I love." The room softens around her words, as if the cafe itself leaned in, eager to absorb every syllable. "Every day, I serve this community." Sarah looked around at the familiar faces, Mrs. Jenkins, the regulars, and even those who had stayed quiet until now. "But what happened? It's not just about my role here. It's about all of us looking out for one another. If we can't support those who fight for us, then what's the point?" The murmurs grew into harmonious agreement. "You've got that right," one man called out fiercely. Sarah's spirit soared, she had sparked something deep within the hearts of those listening. Mr. Thompson rubbed his temples, struggling to reconcile the pressure mounting on him. "Sarah, I never meant to make you feel like less than what you are. A hero." The words caught in his throat, the truth finally surfacing. I was afraid." Jake crossed his arms, his sharp jaw taut with the weight of the moment. "We're all afraid sometimes, Mr. Thompson. But this isn't about fear anymore. This is about strength. You can choose to be part of something bigger. Sarah's breath hitched as she noticed Clara's camera still rolling, capturing every raw flicker of emotion in the cafe. This was beyond her, it was spotlighting the very essence of community. How would you define a hero? Sarah asked, her voice steadying as it rang with determination. Is it just the acts of bravery you see in flashy headlines? Or is it the everyday people who stand up for what's right when it matters most? A tense silence enveloped them as Mr. Thompson pondered her questions. He looked around, his gaze softening as he took in the crowd's fierce loyalty. Finally, he nodded, his resolve gaining strength. I will make this right, Sarah. I promise. Cheers erupted, a symphony that filled the cafe and spilled out into the street. Elation surged through Sarah as her heart swelled with a mix of hope and relief. Maybe they could all heal together from this moment. But the jubilance dulled as Clara's voice cut through the cheers, pulling everyone back. Wait. What exactly are you planning, Mr. Thompson? Will this mean changes for the cafe? As his lips parted to respond, a new tension unfurled. Will uncertainty drown this newfound momentum? Look of determination met with a storm of questions left hanging in the air. When she gazed into the crowd, Sarah felt a stirring deep inside her, a promise to be a beacon of change. What if this wasn't just about her? What if their courage could ripple outwards and inspire more? Together, we can make this place what it truly deserves to be, a home for hope, she declared, her voice rising, building momentum, and as the murmurs swelled again, filled with new energy, one thought loomed larger than the rest: could they turn this moment into something lasting? As uncertainty intermingled with possibility, Sarah clenched her fists, determined. She would seek answers, and she would stand tall. The days ahead would challenge her, but she was ready to fight once more for those she loved and for herself. But just as she thought she'd found her footing, a siren blared in the distance, echoing ominously through the sunlit streets. What storm was about to break just when they thought they'd found their way forward? Suddenly, the joyful commotion in the cafe was interrupted by the harsh sound of sirens. Heads turned toward the windows, their expressions shifting from elation to apprehension. Sarah felt a knot tighten in her stomach, a mixture of worry and curiosity. What was unfolding outside? She glanced at Jake, who wore a look of deep concern as he scanned the street, searching for answers. Then it happened. The doors burst open, and a group of uniformed Marines marched in, their presence commanding immediate attention. The energy in the room shifted again, now thick with uncertainty and anticipation. Shocked gasps filled the cafe as all eyes turned towards the newcomers. Their crisp uniforms contrasted sharply against the laid-back atmosphere of the cafe. "Excuse me." One of the Marines called out, his voice strong and authoritative. "Is there a Sarah Collins here?" A ripple of whispers swept through the crowd, and Sarah hesitated, her heart racing. Had she done something wrong? What could they want? "That's me." Her voice came out steadier than she felt, but there was an inquisitiveness that hung in the air. "What is going on?" Jake stepped forward protectively, his instincts kicking in. "We heard about your actions," the Marine said, his eyes locking onto Sarah's, proud and earnest. "You saved a veteran's dog. That's not just courage, that's selflessness." Lily's poignant smile flashed through Sarah's mind. The dog had been a lifeline for the struggling veteran. "I just did what anyone would do," she whispered, overwhelmed by the sudden gravity of the moment. The Marine stepped closer, his demeanor shifting. "No, ma'am, it's more than that. We want to honor you for your bravery. There's a ceremony planned." "A ceremony?" Confusion washed over her. What did that even mean? Behind her, the cafe buzzed with a mix of disbelief and excitement, the chatter louder than ever. As the reality sunk in, Clara positioned her camera, ready to capture every moment. "Can I ask," she began, her voice laced with urgency, "is this why you're here? Are you planning to make a big announcement?" The Marine nodded, his demeanor reassuring. Yes, we want to celebrate the bravery that comes from ordinary people who stand up when it counts. A spark of inspiration flickered in Sarah's heart. What if this moment went beyond her? What if it galvanized the community? I would love to help highlight not just my story, but the stories of all who serve, whether in uniform or not. The room erupted in agreement, voices rising in support. Sarah felt the warmth of the crowd swell around her, a familiar strength rekindling. Hope wasn't simply about her, it was about everyone holding up their end in the collective fight for connection and respect. But then an unexpected twist. The Marine shifted his weight, his face serious. We also have reports of something more troubling. We've heard threats against the cafe since your incident. It's become a focal point for anger. Gasps flared through the crowd. Sarah's heart raced once again, anxiety tightening its grip. This wasn't just about the celebration anymore, they were now confronting real danger. What if their moment of triumph was about to be overshadowed by fear and hatred? Jake's protective instincts kicked back in. We can't let fear take root here. Not after everything we've just done. The urgency crackled in the air. Would they stand strong together, even when faced with criticism and threats? Would they fight for their safe haven? As Sarah looked into the crowd, she saw resolve reflected back. The sirens may have called them to attention, but they could just as easily push them to rise up. What path lay ahead? Could they shield their community from harm while shining bright for those who fought for them? The room held its breath, perched on the edge of uncertainty. Sarah knew they were standing in the eye of the storm, on the brink of something big. Would they rally together to face the threats head-on, or would the dark shadows of fear pull them apart just when their unity mattered most? An electric tension filled the cafe, the air thick with unspoken fears and newfound determination. Sarah felt a lump in her throat as she caught the gaze of her friends, their faces mirroring the mix of worry and courage swirling inside her. They were all in this together now, but the threats loomed larger with every passing second. Jake stepped closer to Sarah, his voice low but firm. We need to come up with a plan. If they're targeting this place, we can't let them scare us away. We owe it to everyone. Another Marine chimed in, his expression serious but supportive. We're here to offer protection, but we'll need your help to keep the energy positive. Focus on your story, and we'll handle the rest. Clara was quick to act, her camera still ready. What do we want to say? A message? This can't just be about you, Sarah. It has to resonate with everyone who has felt fear in their own homes. The cafe patrons began to whisper back and forth. Ideas floated through the air like sparks. Sarah felt an unexpected swell of inspiration and took a deep breath, turning to face the crowd. What if we make this a celebration of community? She proposed, her voice gathering strength. Let us honor not just veterans but everyone who has faced struggles, those who were there for us when we needed them. We can show that love and courage overshadow fear and hate. The room erupted in enthusiastic applause, voices rising with hope. People nodded, their determination shining through. Sarah saw the softness in Clara's eyes and the proud smile on Jake's face. It fueled her resolve. Then, she noticed a shadow cross the threshold of the cafe. A tall man stood outside, arms crossed and a smirk plastered on his face. Sarah's stomach dropped. He was well known in their small town, an outspoken critic of everything the cafe stood for. Was he here to threaten them? The Marine commanding officer stepped toward the door, eyes locked on the figure outside. You. We need to talk, he called out, his authority resonating with the crowd. Silence fell. All eyes shifted, curious. The man hesitated but slowly approached, his bravado faltering under the weight of the moment. Tension crackled in the air as the crowd held its breath. Is there a problem? The man sneered, but even he seemed to sense the united front forming inside against him. The Marine stood tall, the strength of his words sharp as steel. No, but we will not tolerate threats against this cafe or anyone here. Let us have a conversation. As the two engaged in a heated discussion, the cafe patrons rallied around Sarah. They shared heartwarming stories of compassion and bravery. From rescuing animals, to helping neighbors in need, stories flowed freely, creating a tapestry of unity and resilience. Soon, the man was surrounded by a mix of curious stares and defiant whispers. As he glanced around, he could see the tide was turning. There was no room for his anger here, only uplift and community spirit. After a long moment, he turned and walked away, leaving the cafe to buzz with exhilaration. Sarah felt her heart racing, mixing pride with disbelief. They had pushed back, together. Now, about that ceremony, she said, smiling brightly. Let us make it something unforgettable. But just then, her phone buzzed fiercely in her pocket. She pulled it out to see an alarming message flash on the screen. Something's not right, she muttered softly, her smile faltering as she read the words. What could it possibly mean? The cafe hushed as they caught her solemn expression, worry creeping back in. They had faced down one challenge, but what awaited them next? A glimmer of fears loomed just beyond the walls they fortified so fiercely. The journey was far from over. What other threats would reveal themselves? Would they be strong enough to meet them head-on? Sarah stared at her phone, her heart pounding rapidly. The pixels illuminated a message that sent chills up her spine. It read simply, "They're coming for you. Be ready." As if the air had thickened again, the cafe was engulfed in an eerie silence, a heavy darkness settling where bright hope had just shone. The buzz of excitement from moments ago faded. Everyone around her seemed to instinctively hold their breath. Jake stepped forward, concern etching his features. "What is it, Sarah?" With shaking hands, she showed him the screen. He read the message, his brow furrowing deeper as he handed it back. All eyes were now on her, searching for guidance. The resolve they'd built felt fragile, and the threat loomed large, feeding on doubt like a dark cloud. "Who sent this?" Clara asked, her voice a whisper, as if speaking too loudly would shatter the moment further. I don't know," Sarah stammered, her voice barely above a murmur. "But it feels serious." The room buzzed with tension as the words settled. The patrons exchanged anxious glances, and the energy shifted from unity to peril. "We need to prepare," the Marine officer finally said, his voice calm but commanding. "What exactly do you want to do here, Sarah?" "We can help." She was struck by the weight of his question. Did she want to keep her head down, play it safe? Or push ahead with their plans despite the looming danger? Memories of the stories shared moments ago flooded her mind. The bravery of ordinary people had inspired her. "No. We won't let fear win," she finally declared, the determination rising within. "We're holding the ceremony. We're doing it for everyone who is scared to speak up. This is our space, and we'll protect it." Cheers erupted, followed by a flurry of affirmations. Even the Marine's face lit up with admiration. But Sarah couldn't shake the anxiety creeping back. She glanced back at her phone. They were definitely being watched. "Let us set up security. We can coordinate with local law enforcement," Jake suggested, a fierce determination in his voice. "Exactly," the officer agreed, his authority palpable. "We'll adapt our plan if we need to. But we have to remain strong. We've got your backs." The cafe buzzed with activity as they rallied around her. Ideas flew back and forth, marches, speeches, recognizing local heroes. All the while, Sarah fought to stay focused, battling the unease twisting in her stomach. As the group collaborated, Sarah noticed Clara taking more photos, capturing the essence of their revived spirit. "This is what community looks like," Clara smiled, her camera clicking away. But just then, the door swung open with a resounding crash. The whole cafe jumped, turning to the sudden commotion. A woman burst in, wild-eyed and breathless. "They're coming, Sarah. I heard it." They're targeting the cafe tonight. The room went still again, dread washing over the crowd like a cold wave. Sarah's breath hitched as her heart raced. This was not just some anonymous threat, the fabric of their community was unraveling, and they had to confront it head-on. "Everyone, we need to stay focused," she called, but even she could hear the tremor in her voice. "They want us to be afraid. Let us show them who we are." As her resolve rose, anxiety squirmed within her. Would they truly be able to protect what they had built? And what would happen when the night fell, bringing the real confrontation? The doors creaked ominously as if fate were laying its cards on the table, daring Sarah to continue. What if it's not just a message? What if it's a war? She wondered silently, bracing for the darkness ahead. The room felt charged with electricity, a tension thick enough to cut. Sarah's eyes locked onto the woman who had rushed in, her breath a frantic mess of sound and fear. Everyone else seemed to share her pulse, the collective heartbeat of uncertainty drumming in their chests. "Who are they?" Jake asked, his gaze shifting from Sarah to the newcomer, demanding answers. "They're a group that's been making threats. They're angry about what we're doing here, the ceremony." The woman's voice quivered, each word heavy with urgency. "They plan to make an example of us tonight." Sarah's mind raced. This was no longer just a message, it was a direct challenge. "We need to call the police. Now," she said, her heart hammering louder as she pulled out her phone, fingers trembling as she dialed. As she waited for someone to answer, fear began to shift into something else, something sharper. She could feel the energy among her friends intensifying, a shared resolve sparking within them. A feeling of unity began to blossom through the dread that had threatened to smother them. Sarah Clara's voice was a calming contrast to the chaos surrounding them. "What do we do if they come here? We can't just sit and wait." She didn't have a clear answer. Flicking her gaze to the Marine officer, she sought assurance. He stepped closer, his stance firm, a protector amid a brewing storm. "We prepare. That's all we can do. If we know they're coming, we can meet them head-on." "Meet them head-on," Sarah echoed, realizing that was the truth. They were no longer reacting, they were taking control. The cafe, once bubbling with laughter, began to transform into a makeshift fortress. Tables were pushed against the doors, chairs stacked, and every person there united in purpose. Sarah could see determination etched on their faces. The coffee shop had become their stronghold, a representation of everything they believed in. "Let us create a signal," Jake suggested. "If they come, we'll know it's time to act." He grabbed a few napkins, scribbling notes. "If we see something strange outside, we'll flash the lights." The group nodded, eyes brightening at this small but vital plan. Clara hustled around, snapping photos of everyone working together. Sarah caught her eye, and for a fleeting moment, it felt as if they were part of something larger, an awakening. Tomorrow would tell stories of courage and actions, bravery against the odds. And the fear? It'd be there still, but shared in unity. It felt lighter. Just then, a loud thud came from outside. Everyone froze. Sarah's heart jumped as she moved to the window. Shadows flitted past in the dim streetlight. They were close. Her pulse raced, she felt the weight of the crowd behind her, all whispering encouragement, but was it enough? "Everyone, eyes front. Keep focused, keep alert," she shouted, her voice steadier than she felt. Yet doubt gnawed at her. What if they succeeded? She looked around at her friends, her makeshift family. They had come together, but would it be enough to protect them? Then there was a shout from outside, a mix of anger and intimidation that made Sarah's stomach drop. "They're here!" someone shrieked from the back. In that moment, she faced a choice: stand her ground or let fear win. But Sarah felt a fire igniting, pushing the fear away. "Together!" she yelled. "We can face this. We are more than just a cafe." The lights flickered ominously as she stood, heart racing, adrenaline roaring. They had brought the fight to their doorstep. Would they survive the night? She took a deep breath, the air thick with tension and resolve, as she glimpsed the dark figures gathering outside. Something about their presence felt predatory, and Sarah knew the moment of truth was coming, one way or another. Would they stand as one, or would the shadows consume them? The door rattled as the shadows outside pressed against the barrier of the café. Heart pounding, Sarah felt the heat rising within her. The group around her exchanged anxious glances, and she could see the same question swirling in all their minds. Was this it? As the thuds continued, she clutched Clara's arm, the warmth of her friend lending a bit of courage. "Stay close," she whispered, though she could barely hear her own voice over the pounding of her heart. The café had fallen into an almost eerie silence, the kind that drapes heavily when anticipation fills the air. Each person strained to listen. A sharp intake of breath broke it. "They're trying to get in," Jake hissed, his eyes wide as he peered through the window. "Keep the lights ready," Sarah instructed, hoping they could project some semblance of control. They were prepared, but this wasn't the typical confrontation they had imagined. This was real. The sound of boots hitting the pavement echoed ominously outside. The tension in the air thickened like an approaching storm. With every step, Sarah could feel herself teetering on the thin line between fear and determination. She had to make a choice, one that would define this moment. "We need to show them we're not afraid." Her voice rang out, an odd blend of defiance and desperation. "We will not back down." The group responded hesitantly, but she could hear the murmur of agreement building. Suddenly, a loud crash sent shards of glass scattering against the floor. The door swung open, and a figure stood framed by the darkness, a silhouette, indistinct but undeniably intimidating. Gasps filled the room. "Stand together!" Sarah shouted again, injecting the space with as much courage as she could muster. The figure stepped forward, revealing a muscular build and the unmistakable uniform of a Marine. Suddenly, the tensions shifted. Were they in danger or were they saved? Sarah's heart raced, torn between trust and caution. "Everyone, we're here to help," the Marine announced, voice strong and unwavering. The crowd collectively breathed a sigh of confusion and disbelief. Some began to lower their guards, but not everyone. "What do you mean, help?" someone shouted from the back, fear still clinging to their words. The Marine's eyes swept the room, assessing. "We heard reports of threats. We're here to provide protection. But we need your cooperation." Sarah blinked, processing this revelation. A flicker of hope ignited in her chest, followed quickly by skepticism. "How do we know you're not one of them?" The officer stepped further into the light, arms raised in a gesture of peace. "We're not your enemy. We want to make sure you're safe. But you need to trust us. Right now, there's no time for hesitation." The urgency in his voice sparked something inside her. This was the moment they needed. This was bigger than just a cafe or a ceremony, it was a stand against fear and intimidation. "All right," Sarah shouted, her voice rising above the uncertainty. "Let us work with them." She felt the crowd shift, a wave of agreement sweeping through. They defaced their fears together so far, now it was time to take the next step. But just as the atmosphere began to shift toward unity, another sound broke through the roar of engines, the screech of tires coming to a halt just outside. "They're back!" someone gasped, pointing toward the window. Sarah could already see additional figures piling out of vehicles, more shadows merging into the encroaching darkness. She turned to the Marine, heart racing. "We have to act now. Get ready!" he barked, rallying his team. "Let us secure this position." The moment of truth arrived, and Sarah's heart was in her throat. They had made their choice, but would it be enough to stand against the waves of threats crashing toward them? As the first figure broke through the entryway, Sarah prepared for the confrontation ahead, ready to fight not only for their café but for the very principles they had come to believe in. Would that belief be enough to survive what was coming next? The air crackled with tension as the figure fully entered the café, stepping into the flickering light. It was larger than Sarah had anticipated, a dark uniform stretching over broad shoulders that hinted at power and experience. Behind him, another Marine followed closely, one hand resting reassuringly on his weapon, eyes scanning the room. "Barricade the door," the first Marine ordered, his voice sharp and commanding. Sarah felt a spark of determination replace her fear. She glanced at Jake and Clara, their faces shades of confusion melting into resolve. Together, they moved toward the entrance, grabbing chairs and tables to form a makeshift barrier. The cafe erupted into frenzied activity. People hurried to help, fueled by adrenaline and a shared purpose. The once small space was charged with purpose, light bouncing off the barista counter, the aroma of coffee mixing with the metallic tang of fear. "Clara, help with these chairs," Jake called, wrestling a heavy stool into place. As they assembled the barricade, a series of loud bangs erupted from outside, crashing sounds like thunder. Sarah's heart raced in sync with the chaos. "What are they doing?" she whispered, doubt creeping back in. A Marine stepped closer to Sarah, his blue eyes piercing through the shadows. "We need you to trust us. They'll try to force their way in, and if they do," he let the unspoken threat hang in the air, heavy and suffocating. "We'll be ready," she exclaimed, her voice firmer than she felt. "We can't let them take this away from us." With every loud crash against the door, the tension escalated. The crowd was now a sea of anxious faces. Some individuals clutched one another for comfort, others had their eyes trained on the Marines, searching for a glimmer of hope. Sarah pulled Clara closer, her heart longing for the reassurance of a tight hug, and this time it wasn't just fear that held them together but a fire in their spirits. "Move back," shouted one of the Marines, his tone brokering no argument. The blue light from the emergency exit sign flickered ominously, casting long shadows that danced across their determined faces. The door buckled under another powerful blow. The noise echoed like a warning siren through the cafe. "Get ready," the Marine prompted, positioning his team in front of the barricade, weapons drawn as they prepared for whatever was coming next. Just as the door splintered, a cacophony of voices erupted from outside, shouting distorted threats that sent shivers down Sarah's spine. The world had turned chaotic, each noise amplifying the collective anxiety tangled with a strange sense of unity. "Stick together," Sarah yelled, barely noticing how her voice resonated with a newfound strength. "We can't let them win." Before the door could fully give way, the silence fractured, and from the debris of confusion emerged a burst of chaos. Shadowy figures surged forward, and yet, against all odds, a wall of resolve formed in front of them. Confidence surged as she caught a glimpse of Jake readying himself, arms tense as he prepared to defend the space they fought for. Suddenly, a blinding flash, one of the Marines threw a device that lit up the cafe like daylight while strobing fear into their assailants. The light flickered wildly, revealing faces twisted with rage and desperation on the other side of the threshold. "Now!" ordered the Marine as adrenaline and power coursed through the air. Sarah's heart raced. She had never seen such courage in a room full of ordinary people transformed into something extraordinary, an army of light against the encroaching dark, but even as they stood strong, doubt lingered in her mind. Despite the strength of their numbers, was her belief enough? What other horrors awaited them outside? Then, like a cascade, the door finally broke apart, splintering wood flying in all directions. "Brace yourselves," one of the soldiers yelled, the words barely escaping through gritted teeth. The moment arrived. Would their united front hold against whatever came crashing in that door? What would happen in the eye of this dangerous storm? The path ahead promised danger, but could it also lead to a different kind of hope? As the door exploded inward, the cafe erupted into chaos. Shadows scrambled, a mass of shouted curses and sharp movements. Flames of anger flickered in the eyes of those who roared to breach the sanctuary of their community. Sarah felt the adrenaline ignite every nerve in her body, sharpening her senses, heightening her resolve. Stay strong. She shouted above the noise, her heartbeat drumming in her ears. Together, remember what we stand for. In that moment, they were no longer just patrons or staff, they were warriors, defenders of their home. The Marines stood shoulder to shoulder, a wall of discipline and courage ready to face the storm. But within her, an uncertainty began to bubble. How could love and solidarity stand firm against brute anger? Just as she felt herself slipping into doubt, Jake's hand found hers. We can do this, Sarah. We're stronger together, he said, his voice low, but with fire behind it. It was all she needed. The first wave crashed against their defenses. The Marines moved with practiced precision, using their training to fend off the incursion. A burst of light from a flashbang illuminated the café, bathing the room in a stark brightness that momentarily blinded their attackers. It was disorienting, but Sarah refused to falter. Push back. We want to go quietly. She shouted, her own voice stronger and determined. The crowd rallied, spurred by the urgency of the moment. The sounds of shouting and confusion merged, creating a symphony of resistance. Outside, voices roared with hatred, but inside there was a harmony tempered by love. We're here for each other. Clara cried, snapping photos, capturing the unity, the shared defiance. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, the surge faltered. The figures outside hesitated, caught off guard by the unexpected pushback from the café patrons and the unwavering presence of the Marines. Sarah could see the conflict in their eyes, the realization that their anger wasn't enough to overpower the strength of conviction. Feel that? That's us. Hope and strength. Jake urged as he joined a group of Marines on the front lines, their courage igniting the flames of purpose within her, and then it dawned on Sarah, they were not just fighting against hatred. They were standing for something bigger, a community woven together by shared experiences, compassion, and love. With a collective shout, they advanced, forcing the intruders back, inch by inch, reclaiming their space. Sarah felt the energy shift, they were emboldened, gliding past fear and rising into triumph. Let us show them who we are. She yelled again, pushing ahead into the fray. A surge of voices erupted in reply, a chant of unity. We are community. We are family. Every word propelled them forward. In the clash of bodies and resolve, Sarah caught a glimpse of something transformative happening within the crowd. The familiar faces she had seen every single day in her café were now warriors in their right, their conviction palpable, friendships forged in the heat of adversity. Just when they thought they would be overwhelmed, clarity shone brightly. Another Marine joined, bolstered their defenses, every movement powerful, tactical. They were amplified now, a tide of hope. As the last of the figures fell back, a cacophony of cheers erupted within the café, a mighty roar of victory that resonated with the walls and spilled out into the street. The chaos began to shift from wild to organized, a spontaneous celebration blossoming as the threats retreated into silence. Jake turned to Sarah, eyes sparkling with pride and relief. We did it. Together. And in that moment, surrounded by the people who had chosen to stand for her, the café, and their community, Sarah felt weight lift off her shoulders. We can't just stop here, she said, her voice carrying the momentum of their victory. This moment, it's just the beginning. The Marines smiled, nodding in agreement. Clara continued to capture the aftermath, each photograph turning into a memory imprinted with resilience. Let us hold that ceremony we talked about, Sarah proposed. Excitement and determination alive in her heart. But more importantly, let us share our stories. Each one of us looks different as heroes. Each one of us can be a beacon of hope. Cheers erupted, driven by voices eager to share their narratives, reminding themselves of the strength within. As the night sky deepened, with stars forming a backdrop to their celebrations, one thought hummed in the air: love and courage had triumphed. Tragedies had been foiled and fear had been vanquished. In that very café, generations of stories and dreams mingled together, unbreakable bonds igniting flames of hope for everyone who had fought. As the hour waned, laughter filled the air once again. Sarah beamed, surrounding herself with those who mattered most: her family, friends, and newfound warriors. They had withstood the storm and emerged transformed, stronger, and endlessly unified. "Let us keep the light alive for those who need it," she concluded, raising her glass high. Shouts of agreement echoed back, intertwining into a chorus of future promises amidst the remnants of victory. As dawn unfolded, they knew the road ahead would be steep, but they also carried with them the spirit of a community that chose love over fear. And Sarah? She was no longer just the café's owner, she was a symbol of resilience, a beacon for all who dared to believe the impossible was achievable. Together, they would not wait for change, they would create it, one step at a time. This was the moment they had all been waiting for. Join the movement. Subscribe immediately to this channel so you never miss more exclusive stories of transformation. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and spread hope far and wide. Comment below with your thoughts, feelings, and reactions to this incredible ending. And share this video instantly with at least 5 friends who need a reminder that love conquers all. You need to support this channel. Don't wait not even one more second. Let's continue to inspire and uplift one another through our stories.